Praise the Lord, my beautiful blessed souls, back again with another word, bruised and not broken. Want to talk today about balance and finding balance and asking God for this. This is something that I have been seeking and trying to find in my life. I don't know if I'm the only one. More than likely, I am not. I'm quite sure. And that's with every aspect of your life. When I say balance, oh, give me 1 second. I have to turn this light on. It's a little dark in here. But anyway, when I say balance, I am talking about some of everything in life. And we were discussing the other day, how these type of things can be overwhelming for us to do, which is to have some type of balance in our lives and to be able to live here on earth and honestly live here and not be of the world, because this is what being, a believer is all about. Being here, but not being of here, but in still being able to enjoy life, because no one wants to be here and not be able to actually enjoy life. God wants us to have life more abundantly right here on earth. And that is even before we die and go to heaven. So that's what Christ, died on the cross for us. So today was March 19th. And I'm just going to read what it says in my daily devotional just so you can it says, such a time as this, how can I make the most of my circumstances? God wants to use you right here where you are. His guidance isn't just for your next big decision. He had a purpose in placing you where you are this moment. Look at your current circumstances as a calling from God. Serve and obey Him in the little things today. God has placed you here for such a time as this. God's response, blessed are those who trust in the Lord and have made the Lord their hope and confidence. They are like trees planted along a riverbank with roots that reach deep into the water. Such trees are not bothered by the heat or worried by long months of drought. Their leaves stay green and they go right on producing delicious fruit. Jeremiah 17:7-8. Then the next one says, who can say but that you have been elevated to the palace for just such a time as this? That was Esther 4:14. And then the last one is, when darkness overtakes the godly, light will come bursting in. Such people will not be overcome by evil circumstances. They do not fear bad news. They confidently trust the Lord, for the Lord to care for them. They are confident and fearless and can face their foes triumphantly. Psalms 112:4-6-8. Now, we can all say these things, of course, but a lot of us has been through some things that have been, and we want to get to this place to where we can actually, trust in God and lean on Him in any and every circumstance and situation. But a lot of times it takes time for us to get there, because although we're living from faith to faith, different things are happening. And because of that, it's our emotional state, our mental state, we are a lot of times off balance. And because of that, it makes it harder. And when we're going through, we tend to have a lot of issues. Why? Because we are emotional creatures. And it does hurt us. It does bother us. So let's get into it, because I looked up, how do you live a life here of balance in the world, but not of it, because this is what we are all seeking to try to do, to live a life here that is not of here. So now it says living in the world, but not being of it. It is really about alignment, how we stay spiritually rooted by navigating through a world that consistently pulls you towards imbalance, because that's what this is about: distraction, depletion, and survival mode, because that's what it's about, keeping us in these states of fight or flight all the time. And the kingdom and systems of Lucifer, Satan, the devil, that which are what we live in, are set up that way, to be just that way. For someone like us who is doing deep generational spiritual and identity work, this question isn't abstract, it's practical. It's about how to live in a body that has carried generational burdens, in a culture shaped by pressure and system shaped by injustice, while still protecting your spirit, your peace, and your purpose. This is a full layered framework for what that actually looks like. What does it mean to be in the world but not of it? This is what it really means. That we will participate in life, but we don't let the world define us. And when you look at these things, it means it makes a lot of sense, but then how do we apply it? So let's get into it. We engage with people's systems and responsibilities, but we don't absorb their dysfunction. Now, when we already come from households and families of dysfunction, because most of us were born into it, that gets to be a little tricky. But let's continue on. We move through environments shaped by stress, scarcity, and trauma, but we don't let them shape our identity. That is another thing. It's easy said than done, and it's not to say it can't happen, because we can do all things through Christ, but we just want to pay attention to these things, because this is where the hangups are going to come in with us at, and we want to pay attention. So we're not just going to say, oh, it's just going to be that simple, because it's not. We live with awareness of the world's reality, but we operate from a higher truth. Of course, we're going to operate from the biblical standpoints. But we don't want to be too heavenly minded with not earthly good. So we have to this is where the balance come in. And this is where we need to know how to sift, how to maneuver, and when, where, and how. And we got to ask God to help us with these things. It's not considered to be isolation, which is one of the things that I was doing. And it's also a thing of not being able to earn our way or deserve our way into heaven, because we can go to church, we can pray, fast, all these things. But yet, that is not the reason we're making it into heaven. The real thing is to have a real relationship with God, to know him and have a relationship with him for ourselves. Now, a lot of that has gotten distorted with the ritualistic things of going to church and having these rituals and these religious practices. But remember, we can't get caught up into those, because if we do, we'll take the grace and mercy that is extended to us for granted, because it's not by our might or our works. It is not by earning our way to heaven, whether it is from our spiritual things that we do or our natural. So we must be careful of these things, because a lot of people think that this, because we do all of these things, that that's what that is. Even myself with being isolated, because being isolated is not necessarily the case. We may go through times and periods of isolation, but we are not going to always be isolated, because how will we help the world if we're isolated? So this is another thing, because I was dealing with that as well. And then it's discernment. So it's not isolation, so it's discernment. It's not detachment, it's alignment. It's not superiority, but it's clarity, because a lot of people tend to think because they've been saved longer, because they have more knowledge, because they speak in tongues, whatever it is, that they have more of Christ or more of this or more of that. And that is just not true, because basically, for the most part, we all have the same access, meaning we all have the same love. Now, the access and the favor may be a little different. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not, because we see that even with Moses and the different ones. So, but we're just, going to be mindful of these things. Mental balance is a mind that is rooted. So this is where the mental balancing coming in, that a mind that is rooted and not reactive. To live in the world but not be of it mentally means that we don't let the world's noise become our inner voices. And this is something, because when we're seeing all of these things all of the time, whether it's TV, culture, all these things, it's not, we have to sift. And we're not going to sit here and just, like I said before, just say, oh, well, it's just something simple, because it's not. We think that it is, but in all actuality, it takes consistency to continuously, because this battle, remember, is a battle that is a 24/7 battle. The enemy does not sleep or slumber. But then we also got to remember that anything that God has allowed, because, Satan's a tool used, and it was allowed, and for whatever reason. So when we must filter the information instead of absorbing everything, because sometimes too much information is an overload as well. So we have to be careful overloading ourselves. And how to apply the information that we get to our lives as well, because we can't just hear it, we got to do it. So we choose what gets our attention and what doesn't. This is another thing, because some things will get our attention and some things just naturally will not. And that just depends on who we are as people and different things. Also, to refuse to let stress, fear, and urgency dictate our decisions. This is another thing. Being in fight or flight mode all of the time will have us making the wrong decisions. Why? Because when you're in fight or flight, when you're making decisions hastily, this is where that extra oomph is in there. And a lot of times we don't make them the best ones in those, this is why we need to be, relaxed, calm, and clear-minded when we're making decisions, instead of in a fight or flight. Because when we make things out of urgency, a lot of times later on down the line, we get information, all of that's different. And then we see that we should have, So just pay attention to that. Practices that support this is mental boundaries, discernment about what we consume, meaning what are we listening to, what are we watching, what are we hearing, whether it's online, whether it's music, whatever it is. whether it's people, places, and things in our lives. Slowing down our thoughts also before reacting. This is also something as a discipline we have to, because a lot of thoughts can just pop in your head at different times, and we gotta, it's called to, have our thoughts under captive, and that is in itself is a battle. Naming what is yours and what is not yours. So, and this could be a little tricky because we can sometimes think things is for us and it's not. We can sometimes want things and God does not want them for us. So we have to be careful of these things because sometimes that, what's mine and what's not, we may think is ours and it may not be. So we have to pay attention. Emotional balance, feeling deeply without drowning. To live in the world but not be of it emotionally means that we feel emotions without being ruled by them. Now, we see this a lot because a lot of us tend to, especially women, a lot of times, not to say it like that, but sometimes we can let our emotions get the best of us. And it's not just women, but because we're the more emotional creature, I say that. But in all actuality, when emotions are involved, it does cloud out a lot of things. So we have to be careful. This is with our partners, this is with our jobs, this is with our decision making, all these type of things. So yeah, we really need to have God step in and really help us with these things. When we empathize without absorbing others' pain, that means to be able to, be empathetic with people, but not take on their burdens all of the time. And sometimes as empaths or those who are emotional, or heart-based people, we tend to do that. And that's how we end up carrying a lot of extra unnecessary baggage that is really not our own. So we have to be mindful of that as well. Will we love without losing ourselves? This is another one because a lot of times we get so caught up and lost in people, places, and things. And it can be a very, we want to be like Christ, but Christ never allowed his emotions to dictate what he was sent to do. So we must be careful of that. So that's how I would say that. To stay open-hearted without being unprotected. Now that's guarding your heart with it being open. That is a tricky one. I'm going to be honest with you because being able to love, but still guarding your heart. See, that's the balance. And it's like trying to get those things because we get into these, okay? And it gets to be one side. That's where the scale tips. Once this is where the balance comes in. We need to work on certain things. And that's one of them for me because me personally right now, I just think my heart is more guarded than anything, than open. And that's not really good. God has to help me with that. This is something that I'm just telling you. So, but practices that support this: emotional boundaries, naming our feelings instead of suppressing them. So we have to have the emotional boundaries. That would be one. This is going to help, Then we have to name our feelings instead of suppressing them because a lot of times we do just bury things. Or we just forget about them, let them go. Letting emotions move through us instead of settle in us. Actually acknowledging them, but not making them the forefront and the end all be all. Refusing to carry emotional labor that isn't ours. And this protects our heart from being shaped by the world's wounds. And that's another thing, because it's how we allow our heart to be beat up all of the time when we are doing those things. Physical balance, meaning care for the body without worshiping it. Now, we see a lot of this going on right now because it's a lot about worshiping of the body. People don't think that that's what it is. When you see all these BBLs, when you see all of these, changing, it's all about your looks and how pretty you are and all of this and the outside. But what's going on in the inside, nobody's really caring about what's really going on in the inside of the person. Because the outside could be well kept, well maintained. Just like I said before, you can be looking like you are healthy and then on the outside, but on the inside be full of toxins, whether it be mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, and spiritually. Because remember, a lot of toxins, when I was talking about how, you can smell demons and you can smell different things when you walk past people, you smell that they smell ridiculously, one way or another, that smelly, stinky smell to them. And that's because if it's their breath, if it's their feet, if whatever it is, if you're just walking past them and they bathe and they have this stench on them all of the time, that means they're full of demons, they're full of toxins, they're full of stuff. While they're not keeping themselves up, they're not taking their pHs off, all kind of things. And this is where it comes on. Men are like, oh, with a woman. A lot of times with these women, if they're sleeping around and if their pH was not thrown off and then they get with somebody, it was because of that person a lot of times. So we have to think about these things. We have to pay attention to these things. I'm just being honest. This is why all the sleeping around is not good. This is why God said we're supposed to be married, have our own husband, our own wife, because we're becoming one with all these other people. And as for women, I talked about the DNA. And when you're sleeping around with all these men, the DNA gets stuck in you. You carry the DNA inside of your body. And this is where that comes from. When they talk about we have multiple personalities. Why? Because we have all of these other mixtures of all these other men inside of us. Why? Because whatever is put into us, we hold, we keep, we facilitate, you see? So that will be a part of it. So anyway, physical balance is caring for the body without worshiping it. To live in the world, but not of it physically means to honor your body as a vessel, meaning because it's, the temple of God, Holy Spirit, but not as an idol, meaning we don't worship it. And this is where this comes in. But we see how it's being made to be an idol, meaning they are worshiping it. We care for our health without obsessing over perfection. And that's with anything. And this is where the balance is going to come in. We don't have to obsess over perfection when it comes to our bodies, when it comes to these other things. If we're going to do anything, which even with perfection, we can be in psychosis, obsessing over being spiritually, connected to God, or, all of these things. Yes, we can, because this could be the mental thing. Because sometimes we have go through these little issues where, we're overly doing this or overly doing that. And it's not of God. It's of us. It's of, we're just taking it too far. Then we must listen to our body without letting fear rule over us. Meaning just paying attention to what is going on, like I was talking about before in the last video. So we want to care for our health, but we don't want to obsess over it, and meaning perfection. We know nothing's going to be perfect here. So, we strive to be perfect with Christ, but we know we're not going to be perfected until he gets here. So we treat our body as sacred, but not disposable. So that's, that's kind of defining it. Now, the practices that support this will be rest, nourishment, meaning getting significant amount of rest that we're supposed to be getting, because a lot of times in this culture that we live in of just work, hustle, there's no rest. We rest when we die, and that's how we end up in the grave early. Nourishment, we need to eat the right things, and for each person that could be different. Everybody's body is different. It reacts to things differently. Movement, meaning, physical. Medical care when it's needed, of course, and listening to our body signals, as I said before, and protecting our bodies from being shaped by the world's demands, meaning what it is that they want from us, because that's the chain, yoke, shackles, and bondage of the world, meaning being a slave to it and what it says and what it says about us and how we're supposed to live and what we're supposed to do here. And whether it's culture, whether it's social media, whether it's TV, whatever it is, of them showing us what's what and who's who and how we're supposed to live here and be here. This is what this is about. And a lot of people do actually go along with these things because they can't be without the BETs and all of this other stuff. And, they can't be without the music and all this other stuff. And whatever it is, that they just have made their idols, and they can't be without worshiping these people, places, and things. This becomes an issue and a problem, because this is what ends up happening. They build and live their lives. It could be off of a movie. It could be off of a song. It could be off of, whatever, a time and an era. Some people get stuck in the 90s or in the 70s or in the 60s, whatever it is. It's like, you see what I'm saying? Not evolving and making an idol of these things. So we just got to be careful of these things. Financial balance is using money without being used by it. Okay, remember they said in the movie, make the money, don't let it make you grow. But anyway, you go get past that. So to live in the world but not be of it financially means we use money as a tool, not as a measure of worth, because a lot of times we see that. That's what happens. People who tend to have success, whether it's educational or whatever else, we tend to give them more respect or more this or more that when we do regular people who are not have as much financial means, or if it's a looks thing, how pretty they are or whatever. But God does not respect as a person. So this is where this comes in. You make idols of these people, places, and things once again. So not to use money. We're supposed to use money as a tool, not as a measure of worth. To pursue stability without worshiping success. Exactly. Because worshiping success, like I just said, between using money as a tool and worshiping it, this is what happens, and they use this. They use this against us all the time. So we have to be mindful of it. We steward resources without being controlled by scarcity. This is another thing. A lot of times when we are people who brought up, With scarcity we have when it comes to control issues and having control over certain things, money, some people have a lot of control and then some people have none. But we have to keep a balance because money is supposed to flow. So we're supposed to be able to use money and not be scared of it. And we're also not supposed to hoard it, but we're also supposed to not overly spend. So this is where the balance of in between comes in. This is where this is. Then we must make decisions from wisdom and not fear. And that, we spoke about in the other one when it came to being always in a fight or flight mode when you're trying to make decisions. Living your life in fight or flight is always in a state of fear, in a state of, and this is not good. Okay, so we must understand that that's not the way God wants us to live. And for a lot of us, that is a normal living lifestyle because that's all we know. So we have to, get out of that. And it's going to take God to help us get there. Jesus is the one. Practices that support this will be budgeting with intention, right? Having a budget. You could spend, but just a certain amount, whatever you need, not being too reckless and, keeping that balance. Breaking scarcity mindsets, of course. That's another one. We were talking about that as well. Generosity without self-depletion. Exactly. Being able to be a blessing, but not depleting yourself, because that was another thing we were talking about, where when you give and you overly are giving and you're not being poured in, you're just depleting yourself. So these are the things that will support that. Refusing to let money define your identity, meaning so whether you have it or whether you don't, it doesn't, make you more than, better than, or less than. This, I would say, with education and other things as well, because those things they tend to put. It's not to say you can't be educated. It's just to say that we're not going to sit here and say there's people in different areas and they do different things. Everybody has their own distinguished everything, and that's fine. But we're not going to make people more than what they are in any area, because God does not call us to do those things. That's when you make people idol. People place things idols. You put them on these pedestals that they really don't belong on. It's not to say you don't have respect for them and what they do. It's just to say that you don't make an idol of them. There's a difference when you worship something, you see what I'm saying, than when you respect them and what they have going on. Spiritual balance, rooted identity in shifting the world. To live in the world but not be of it spiritually means that we know who we are beyond our roles, meaning just being who I am as a person, meaning trauma or circumstances. I talked about this before, when, people have titles and it's not the title that makes you who you are. You are who you are. You just happen to be holding these titles in life. And so because the roles and titles can change, they, and then if they do, and for whatever reason, you lose that job or you lose that, this is where people get caught up to where they're very depressed when they no longer have this looks or this money or this, education. Why? Because they made an idol of it, or other people made idols of them. And then when it's taken away, then they're so distraught and they just are ready to commit suicide. They're ready to do all these things. This is how we allow these things to become idols, and we get caught up in the things, people, places, and things, instead of having that balance to know that you can be this, have this, and not make it an idol of it, whether it's you or other people. We're going to operate from purpose and not pressure. That's another one. So is know who you are beyond your roles, your trauma as well, because we don't want trauma to always be, the bandwagon, because, I remember, I forget who it was talking about being a strong Black woman. And then they were like, okay, we've had to be strong. That's, trauma and circumstance. That was roles we had to play. But I don't want to hear, oh, she's a strong Black woman. She's a strong Black woman, because that insinuates that I must always be a strong Black woman, which means that I'm supposed to take more crap than I'm supposed to, more stuff added onto my plate than I need to. That is not what I want to be known as. Okay, so pay attention to that. And then a lot of, we're going to get into that, because a lot of people just assume that that's what you need and want, and it's a thing to be proud of. It is not. That's meaning you're having to carry more weight, more trauma, more things on your plate than you were supposed to necessarily have. This is how you deplete yourself. This is how you become the woman who is just, the woman with the issue of blood. She's just bleeding out. And everyone's like, oh, she's just a strong Black woman and she just needs to take it, and she's just so strong and we could just add more on her. She continued to carry these loads. No. We operate from purpose, not pressure. So this is what purpose and not pressure, because we don't want to be pressured into things. We want to know what we're supposed to do and, apply it where it needs to be applied. We want to stay connected to God even when the world is loud. because a lot of times that it's hard to, we can drown God out, or we can have so much going on that we don't hear him. Put it like that. And we choose alignment over approval because, like I tell people, we know that Resurrection Sunday is coming. 1 week, Christ went in Palm Sunday. Everyone was praising him. The next week, they were killing him. So, this is exactly how this goes. So when you think about 1 minute being approved and the next minute not, this is how this is. Life and, this is how this world is. 1 minute they'll love you and the next minute they'll be crucifying you. Whatever little, And that comes from this idleness because they put you in a place where you're going to be worshipped and that's not your place. Practices that support this is stillness, which we need to get still so we can hear God's voice, prayer as well, discernment, gratitude, obedience and the guidance, and protecting our spiritual environment, of course. And then this protects our spirit from being shaped by the world's illusions, right? Because a lot of this is illusion and delusion. A lot of us live in our own world of illusion and delusion, whatever it is in our world, in our minds that we think of, our normals. This is the way the world and life is, but in all actuality, it is not. That is just our version, our norm, our whatever it is. And it's, we just automatically seem to think everybody live and act like that, and they don't. So, relational balance, connected but not consumed. So to live in the world but not be of it relationally means that you love people without losing yourself. Now, this is a lot because I was going to talk about this with the codependency later on. And we talk about codependencies, meaning that you cannot live and be by yourself. You have to always be chasing down people, places, and things. This is a problem. That means you are codependent. And I believe God created us to be somewhat codependent, but I believe it's on him and on him through him to our spouses and children or whatever. So we're going to break that down and look into it as, I'm not ready to do that one just yet. I got to get some more information on it. So, and you stay connected without being entangled. And entangled meaning, that's how you love people and you love them, from a distance from here. Everyone has their own stuff going on, but you don't have to necessarily be intertwined all the time with everything that they're doing, And I think that's what that is about. We set boundaries without guilt. We choose relationships that align with our purpose. And we have to pay attention to that because sometimes we don't really see what's going on. And I believe, it's Monique, Monica, and Henry. I hate that they're going through some things, but we're going to get into that in the end. Practices that supports this is saying no, choosing healthy connections, releasing draining relationships. Now, saying no is something that a lot of people have a problem with, but you have to get to a point to where you're comfortable with saying no, because if not, people will drain you. Takers have no stop button, no chill button. So you have to know to say no. Choosing healthy connections, meaning you have to ask God to help us with that because sometimes we see things and sometimes we don't. Release draining relationships, exactly. Those who are just draining you, meaning taking, they're not pouring, they are depleting you. Loving from overflow and not from depletion. I remember when Fantasia said a while ago, she was like, she's going to give from her overflow, from what pours overflow out of her cup, not what's in it is for her. And I respected that and I appreciated that. And I really looked into that because that is something that we really need to look at. And pay attention to. So it's loving from overflow and giving from overflow and not of depletion. This protects your relationships from being shaped by the world's dysfunction because that's what this all is. Chaos. And, Satan loose for the devil, his kingdom of systems is about what? Chaos. And a lot of times they want order out of chaos. So they tell you, oh, we're going to live like this, but it's all chaotic, but we're going to have some order to it, right? Generational balance, breaking cycles without breaking connection. Now, this is something we have to learn how to do because a lot of times things can get crazy. So live in the world but not of it generationally means you honor your lineage without repeating its patterns. And a lot of times we don't see them, so we have to pay attention. We carry the wisdom and not the wounds. That is another one, separating the two. Because in order for you to have wisdom, usually you have to go through some things, so you will have some wounds. So that's the healing part. You break cycles without rejecting your roots. So that's accepting it, but you want to change it. You want to start something new and different. And then you choose healing even when your lineage chose survival, right? Because a lot of times this dysfunction is, especially in our communities, it is about survival, because a lot of it, like I said, we were fight or flight mode a lot because of the way the world is set up, especially when it comes to Black people. And the reason I say this is because I'm Black and I'm a Black woman in America. So this is where I am in life and where I'm living. So I'm going to speak about things that I know and not really too much of the things that I don't know. And I investigate and look up and, ask God to help me with it. But anyway, practices that support this: naming generational patterns, which we've been doing, choosing new behaviors, of course, healing inherited wounds, creating new norms for the next generation, of course, and this protects our lineage from being shaped by the world's trauma. So that's how we're going to get, and that's the healing, deliverance, and restoration that I always be talking about. That's always a constant, ongoing thing, because you will never be completely healed on this side of the world. I would say that unless Christ himself came down and just did it for you. Because other than that, especially when it comes to things like that, because you're going to be going through things as you're healing with other things. So it's going to be things on top of things that it's just. So the integrated meaning, living in the world but not of it, is not about escaping the world. It's about not letting the world shape your identity, your values, your peace, and your purpose. It's about groundedness, clarity, boundaries, alignment, discernment, spiritual rootedness, emotional intelligence, generational healing. It's the life our lineage never had the space, the safety, or the support to live in. And the life that we are now trying to step into. So what this is a part of the mental, emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual, and or relational, generational, feels like and looks like, where balance is hardest for us right now. We gotta look at the areas where it's hardest. And we're gonna look at those, but hold on. Okay, so I have a mixture of these, but for everyone it's different. Like I said, everyone is different. We was talking about the fear, the doubt, the worry, anxiety, trust issues, unforgiveness, bitterness, and hate. Now, this has a lot to do, and when I was talking about the codependency, this is what I was talking about, because we see what was going on with, is it Monica, and Henry? And I believe they are, and I will keep them in prayers. Because going through these type of things, especially publicly, is not for the weak. I myself went through separation with my own husband, and I felt like there was, this was some years ago, he changed, but then I thought to myself, because there could be some sorcery and witchcraft involved, don't get me wrong, but then everyone has their own free will. So with that being said, their own free will. So even if someone does something, and you not knowing, because you're not knowing that it's being done to you, but depending on what's already inside of you, your desires, your lust, your this, your that, this is where that's going to be used. And it's only going to be used in areas where you will be most vulnerable. That's how it's going to, work or attract. So it's like, okay, if one day they just up and said this, but then it's not just one day, because these things happen over a period of time frame. And a lot of times we don't see what is going on. And I wanted to get into this because for my younger ladies, when it comes to dating older men, or my older ladies, young ladies, both, when it comes to dating outside of your race, outside of your cultures, when these people practice other things, you must investigate. Okay, and I'm talking about in the natural, in the spiritual. You must be investigating, because you can't just go off of emotions. You can't just go off of, they say lust, or the people's representative that they put in front of you, because you really don't know this person. And it's like, you're only going to know what they want you to know. Okay, and that's number one. And then number two, it's when it comes to different countries and their cultures, we must understand, first of all, as Black women, I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to say this right here, because love is a choice. This is what I was talking about before, and I have been going through it. Love is a choice. And because love is a choice, we can't force and make people love us. I don't care who, what, when, where, how it is. We can't force them. God does not force us to love him. He does not force us to love each other. He tells us to do so, but we will have free will. So when I was talking about the codependency, I was talking about these things for a reason. Because, like I said, a lot of times people do not see these things. When you're looking into different cultures, different races, a lot of times when it comes to Black women, especially Black American women, I'm going to say this because we are the least married, we're the most exploited, we're the most mistreated as far as our own and others, meaning our own race. Our own people, our own men, our own each other, meaning men and women against each other, women and women against women, men against men, families against family. This is where this is all about. It's been this way. It's sad. We saw it in, I talked about How to Make the Slave and how they put all these people, places, and things, whether it's government, whether it's other Blacks, whether it's other, this, that in front of us to have us just the way that we are against each other, divided, separated, not unified. That's in every aspect. That's in our homes. That's in our marriages. That's in relationships. That's in financial, every aspect that we look at it mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, and spiritually, whether it's at work, whether it's your career, whether it's education, whether it's trying to build a business, whatever it is, your children, your spouses, how we relate to each other, how we date each other, all of these things, pay attention. Because one thing I do know that I've heard and seen for so long, when it comes to us, any other race and creed will come, and they will come, whether it's from different countries or different whatevers, and they're already in their minds, they're already prepared and already told that we are the worst and the lowest of the low when it comes to Black American people. That's number one. And this is why, if you noticed the other day, I did 2 shorts and it was about Black American women. And when it came to the Section 8 and the welfare and all of that, and how it's not even created for us. And then 2, but it's stereotypical that they would put it on us, put it like as if it was made and built for us, which it was not. And so we hear that and we hear them talk of that, but then they don't talk about the issues as to why we're on it, because we don't have the men in the households to help us take care of the children. So we need the extra income on top of that. They don't go into further discuss, all these other things that factor in, whether it's the child support, all of these things that were already put in place, because we're not looking into the bigger picture. So like I said, there's so many layers to this. You can go back at some videos I've done. And you can kind of, when I talk about the Willie Lynch letter, when I talk about the government and how it was already built and designed to be against Black people, we were brought here to be cattle or to be considered as property, 3/4 of a human, which is not even a human being. So when you look at these things, then you start to understand why it is that we are treated the way we are, and why they make such a big deal of making sure everyone else all over the world sees us as this one stereotype, this one narrative. We're never saw as business-minded, smart, they portray us to be these buffooneries that's walking around with their pants sagging all the time and smoking weed, hanging out, drinking, partying, shaking their butts, as if that's all that there is to Black American people. That we are lazy, we are this, and this is what these people in these other countries are taught about us. So we must, and that's whether they're Black or not, we must pay attention and we must understand this. And because of that, this is why when they come here, they treat us the way that they do. And they don't make it, whether it's the Chinese or Hispanics or other Africans or Caribbean people, when they come to America, they treat us a way that already lets us know that they feel like they are above us and that we are beneath them. And they let us know that they are already, going to mistreat us along with everyone else in order for them to play along, to get along, because you can't come here and treat us like anything and make it. So, and we know what that's about as well. We already discussed the spiritual realm of that, because we are more than whom they say. We are the chosen people. This is one of the reasons why. But we are cursed and rebellious. So why? Because we rejected God. So when we look at these things, we start to, but it's not that he doesn't love us and still wants to have relationship with us. It's that we have to turn back to him. This is what this is all about. Repent and turn back. So when we look at these things and pay attention to them, that makes a lot more sense. So now that we've gotten to this point to where when we look at these other customs in other countries and how they treat their women, now a lot of the Muslim countries do not respect their women either. They have a lot of issues when it comes to their women. I'm going to be honest with you. They can say what they want to, but you can look it up, and they have a lot of the same issues, but they hide it very well. They only put out what they want to put out as far as narratives, stereotypes, and whatever when in media and how they portray, because they want to be portrayed as something as well that they are not. Okay, so now we're getting treated like, so these people will come here and they will either marry, date, or whatever so that they can use the black male, the black woman for whatever reason. They don't respect them. They don't necessarily love them like that. It's just seen as a tool or opportunity. A lot of them in their other countries and cultures, like I said, they do things very differently. And until investigate unless you know about their religions, and usually they have them with their own people because they want them to stay within these certain guidelines of culture, how they practice their religious practices, different things. In a lot of these other countries, remember, they practice a lot of what we said, which was the spiritualism that the ancestors was, which is considered to be the voodoos, the hoodoos, the Santa Marias, all these other things that are like the Catholicisms. They are practicing satanic worship. So when you think the root, the witchcraft, the sorcery, and it's not just there, because remember, they were brung here from the islands. This is where you get it in the South a lot. Why? Because a lot of us were brung here from different countries, and that was what they did. So we see it here as well. So let's not be stupid about it. That's why they talk about New Orleans and these different places in the South. They do the root works and all. Yes, that's what that's about. So we have to pay attention. So now when we listen to what goes on, and when I hear them talk about how, whether they're older or younger. Now for the older men who love to date younger women, it's all about control. It's all about manipulation. It's all about them having them do it and say whatever it is they want. And having them, why? Because the older women are not going to necessarily just fall in line. She's going to have more, pushback. She's going to have more say-so. She's going to have more comment because she knows more. So when you're young, dumb, and full of cum, I'm going to apologize for saying that, but this is what they call it. Then this is what you're going to get. So that's why they would pick the younger woman. She looks better. She's more controllable, whatever. When it's the older woman, or whether it's the foreign people coming here, it's going to be, she doesn't know my culture. She doesn't know this. She doesn't know that. She's going to manipulate, control, confuse, oppress, whatever it is to, why? Because usually they see us as the ones who are not married. We want to be married. We want to have someone love us. We're treated poorly. So whoever comes along and gives us, and that's in any, whether it's a male or female, any type of love, any little this, any little attention, because of, I'm going to read the codependency stuff and we're going to see how that falls into play. Once, any type of anything, it's going to be a lot. You can give her the bare minimum. She's going to think the world of it because no one's really taking care of her, doing anything for her. And this is how the trickery gets to be there. And remember, say no mind sending you that one man who's going to do the bare minimum, but to you it's everything. Why? Because you're not getting anything from anyone else anyway. So so this is what this is about. Now, like I said, it could be because they need green card visa. It could be for whatever. They want to bring their other families here. I just hear a lot of this goes on when it comes to the black women in America, of how they are used and abused, not just by black American men, but a lot by other countries, other nationalities, other religions, of people who come here from other countries. And they use them for green card. They use them for this. They use them for visa so that they come here and they can get their education. They can do whatever. Now they'll be here or they'll get over here and then they'll meet. That's one of the main things, to meet, marry, and have children fast, quick. Why? Because paperwork needs to be filed and monies needs to be exchanged in order for them to be here. And, people will take care of them while they're here for so long, but that is the main goal. So we have to be careful of these things, because I hear so many horror stories about how these women got with these men, and for whatever reason. And remember, their family and their culture is set up to where they don't like you, they don't want you, they don't respect you as his wife, as his woman. They would rather he be with, other women in their tribes or in their whatevers. And this is what happens. So you end up getting dogged out, or you might be treated halfway fairly for a while. But then if you was to go to their countries and the way they treat them, they treated them much more differently. Why? Because they have more respect for their own. So I would just say we must pay attention, ladies. A lot of times the signs are there, and or other people are telling us about these things. And we think it can't happen to us. We always think that we are the exception to the rule, sweetheart. Please understand that can be a 1 in a million shot. I will not sit here and say that it can't. But what I will tell you is simply this. You better have your ducks in a row, even if it's not. This is why I tell people, especially women, have your own money, your own finances, your own this, your own that. Investigate whoever you're planning on dating, seeing, whatever relationships, investigate them. I don't care if you have to go down to look at APBs, their arrest records, their whatever. Make sure that you get all the information on people that you could possibly, before you get involved to that extent. Because once you are married, getting into it is so easy, but getting out of it is, as you can see. I look at Candy and Todd, and I remember even on the show, I forget her name, Christopher Wallace's wife, Christopher Williams. And I remember she kept telling Candy, she just finds herself, always in a better situation. It's just something about him that she just, and Mama Joyce kept saying, and everybody was hating on Mama Joyce, and Mama Joyce saw it because she knew it. And then it's not to say that is her daughter. So she doesn't want her daughter to be taking care of a man. And then most of us, when we look at these things, we have to pay attention. And then when we accept it and we get into it and then it doesn't go the way, then we're upset and it's cool. We get it. But it's not to say that the red flags weren't there. So we have to be very much so paying attention to what is going on, especially when you are the one that has the most to lose, because these people will come and you're already established and they have a checklist of who they can get with and who they cannot. And I'm just going to give a couple of stories that I know of. Like, I know of people who have met people and then a few months later, they met someone and they was from another country. And then they were, trying to date or whatever, and it didn't work out. And so then a couple months later, they see them married to somebody completely else. And I'm like, what? That's ass. But you see, you're not the only one. They are on there, especially these online dating sites, whether they're Christian mingles or not. Because remember, everybody on these sites don't mean that they this, that, and the third. They will go on there. They love to prey on saved so-called Christian women as well. Please do not ever get it twisted. That's why they love going to the church, because they know the church women are trying to be saved, trying to halfway live right. And they don't mind coming in, getting with them. That's why you see less men in the church, and the men that are in the church don't want the women in the church. Usually they want to bring the harlot from out and bring her in and clean her up and all this. Honey, listen, this is what goes on. It is sad. And they will have the women in there, we waiting on our husband, and it's not to say that God won't do it, but 20, 30, 40 years go by and you sit, and this is how the discouragement, the doubt, the fear, the anxiety, the trust issues, unforgiveness, bitterness, hatred comes in, because they're sitting there waiting for certain things that may or may not give. God may have or may not have said that. He may or may not want that for your life, or he may not or may not want it for you right now. But whatever the case is, this is how we get caught up. And then we have a relationship with God, but is it truly have a relationship with God? Because then we're angry and we're doing about the religious rituals and going to church and doing, but then we're angry, we're bitter with God. Do we really love God? Are we really having a relationship with God the way we should? Or is it just all about, the ritual, going to church, and then we not changing? We're going, hanging out at parties, we're doing this, we're doing that, and we're still in the world and still not changing, and still, this is what I'm talking about. So we see a lot of this. Are we really loving God? So I'm going to talk about this codependency. Now, why? Because a lot of times people are codependent. And like I said, I believe we're supposed to be codependent to a certain extent, because we're supposed to be codependent on God more than anybody. Then comes the husband and the wife, and then comes the rest. So there is something to that. That's why there's a hole there that God is supposed to fulfill. But codependency, one, is driven by one or more compulsions. And when we look at people who have OCD or these other disorders, whatever it may be, PTSD, whatever. And for whatever reason, they could have been military, whatever, their life, growing up, the trauma. And this is what it is. They have compulsions. And it's about having some form of control. Okay. So then two, they are bound and tormented by the way things were or they used to be in their dysfunctional family. So a lot of times that's where they, the memories and all that, they have to go through the healing, deliverance, and restoration process for these things. And these are also demonic as well as, the natural stuff. So when we look at it, this is what we're talking about. Then three is they usually have a very low self-esteem, and their maturity levels are also very low. Why? Because a lot of times we only grow up to a certain point. It's like trauma, all these things, they do interfere with your brain, with the work. And this is what I was talking about before with the neurological, it does have effects. So we see a lot of people getting older, but they're not wise, they're not mature, they're not making wise and good decisions. And this is where because they never grew up past the trauma. So this is what, they're talking about, going to, rescue the old little person that was hurt. That's what a lot of that is about. For happiness hinges on others, meaning people, places, and things. This is where their happiness, they're never happy. And it's only when they have someone, or only when they have, the degree or the masters or the new car or the big house or the, the business, whatever it is. You see what I'm saying? Or that spouse, or whatever it is that they have created, those idols, and that they are going, or the body that they they will continue constantly to do work either on their bodies or in their homes, or whatever it is you see them chasing after consistently. So their happiness hinges and depends on these things, and they're not happy without it. And of course it can change. Those things can change. 5, they feel responsible for others. A lot of times you will find that that's what the empathetics are. That's where, the ones who have hearts, but they don't know how, because that's a God thing. When it comes to God giving you a heart, and maybe you're just not using it properly because, you don't know how to say no. That's where that comes in. Feeling responsible for others. 6 would be relationships, okay? And the unstable lack of the instability and the lack of balance in the relationships, meaning in these relationships, people, places, and things, the dependence to independence is always a struggle. So we will see that happening as well. 1 minute they're dependent, the next minute they're independent. So that will be a struggle. 7 will be they're masters at denial and repressions. So this is because the trauma, they hide it. They don't know how to do anything else. They suppress a lot of, because they're not dealing with it. They're not handling it. So they may drink it away, smoke it away, sex it away, whatever it away. Educational, chasing all of these accolades away, workaholism, successism, where they're always striving. They're never content with anything. They always want more. And those could be, whether it's money, whether it's fame, whether it's power, whether it's beauty, whatever. So they're constantly striving for these things all of the time. Number 8. A lot of times they worry about things that they cannot change. And sometimes they even try to change them. This is where, and I found myself, trying to change people, places, and things that, out of my hands, out of my reach, because everyone has their own, free will. God gives it to us, and people are allowed to do, whether it's good, bad, or in between. They are allowed to make their own decisions or choices, whether we like them or not, do what they want. And, unless it's a legal thing, we cannot stop them, So just knowing how to let people be, that's a control thing. How want to have control over people, want to manipulate, want them to have your way, do what you want them to do. And a lot of times people will say that that's love, and it's not. It's control. It's dysfunction. That is not considered to be love. If you can't be with someone and every little thing that they do, if it has to be what you want them to do all the time, that's a problem. That's manipulation, that's control. A lot of times that's lust. And when you look at that, and when you look at these relationships, and when people get into them, then we wonder why they don't last. Because as long as this person is able to control and manipulate this person, and they're doing everything that they want, and then it may not be so on the other end. So when we look at these things, we're like, okay, well, they're like slaves and puppets, and they just do. And you see it a lot. You see it, and sometimes it's the men, and the women, and then it's the women with the men. But we have to pay attention. And this could be at your job. This could be anywhere. You can see these things. Then they usually have, this is 9, the extremes. Okay, so there's always a life of extremes. This is where we get the ups and the downs. This is the roller coaster ride. One minute they're completely in love, the next minute they're completely in hate, and then they break up and they make up and they get back together and all this. And we see this plays out a lot in all of these like movies and shows and all of this. And it's like and it's pulling at the emotions and the heartstrings, and that is not love. I'm sorry. It's called extremes. It's called the extremes. And this is what is dysfunctional. But they call it love, to make up, to break up. That's all we do. No, that is so dysfunctional. If that's all you have in your life is a high and a low and a fighting and a making up and a breaking up, and there's never any middle, there's never any balance, something is seriously wrong with this picture. And this is what people now, we call these things love. Nope, they're not love. It's lust, it's dysfunction, it's good sex, it's emotions, it's draining, it's unbalance, it's all of these other things. But honey, that is not love. That is dysfunction. That is not normal. It's like we call it normal because for them that's the normal. That's just like the ones when you see with the abuse, when they're getting abused. And then one minute he's terrible and he's abusing them, and then this, and then the next minute they so in love and they together and can't nobody touch. This is what, that's what that looks like. And it's like, and I guess people get caught up in it because the emotional aspect of it, it's very high, lowy. It's up and down. That's the roller coaster. And it's the ride, of the up and down, all around, in and out, whatever. And some people can't live unless they have a relationship like that. And they call that love because outside of that, they don't know that love can be consistent. Love can be coming home. But then they call that kind of love, they call it boring because then they want that. They want nothing but that. If that's all they know and it's normal and that's all that they've ever had, then they want that all of the time. That's why a lot of times folks want the bad boy or the good girl or the whatever. And they want the opposite because they want what they don't have, or, and people say, well, oh, we attract who we are. No, we usually attract the opposite of who we are because opposite attracts. You don't attract, you repel the nice guy. You don't like the nice guy. Usually you repel the nice girl because you want some excitement. So when we look at these things and we think that it's excitement, it's not necessarily excitement. It's just some type of an imbalance, okay, that we have going on. Dramatic circumstances, situations we were brought up in, grew up in, to see that was considered to be normal. And we think that we have to go find that in everyone in order to have that life. And that's where that, the unstable, the dysfunctional way. They keep trying to go back to the dysfunctional way that they grew up of living. That was number 2. And they keep trying to look for that in other people so they can have that in their own. So if they came from a household where that was normal, then they want that in their life because they see that that's the way that they want to live. So we got to pay attention to these things because a lot of these things are just like crazy. And then number 10, what is this? Is looking for something. They're always constantly looking for something. Looking for something that is lacking and or missing in their life. So that's searching for that perfection, that this, that. They're always on the hunt. They're never satisfied. They're, no matter what you do and give them, they're not happy. It doesn't matter what it is. They're never satisfied. And when we see these things, because a lot of times we will see them, that's when you see the men running from woman to woman to woman. And no matter how good the woman is, a lot of times they're either looking for a man or they're looking for something else. Like I said, these are the things that we have to pay attention to because we're just not. And we, I would say that the world that we live in has glorified these things. And it has made these things to where, oh, well, if he had 10 women and well, I'm going to be the 11th and he's going to marry me. And if you see people who have habitually had children and they not with the person, and you see people who have been married more than once or whatever it is, they don't not good with finances, they're not good with this, they're not, we have to pay. Why would you want to be the next one on that list. See, because a lot of times we sign up thinking we're going to make a change, and that's where that make a change and make a difference and change these. You can't change people. People are who they are. Accept them, love them, be with them or not, but they are who they are. And until they themselves are ready to change, I would tell people, which they can, and if they get with God and they really want to, they can, So a lot of times you'll see people who are merging and they're going into this different part of their life, and the people that they were around, oh, she was this, she was that, she was that. Exactly. But that doesn't mean that that person is the same as they were before. And especially if you're not necessarily around them and you're not involved with them on a day-to-day and you're not seeing them. And they may not have completely changed. They may have changed some in some areas, and then they're still working on the others. But, they're not necessarily the same, because if you're just the complete same person that I met 15, 20, 10, 5, 6 years ago, something is wrong. You're not moving, you're not evolving, you're not learning, you're not growing, you're not evolving at all. And life is about living, learning, and growing, moving forward. So the people that I dealt with back then, that's why I always tell people I don't want to spin the block. I used to do that a lot, and I don't want to do that anymore. It's a waste of time. All you do is find out what really was the issue, and that's it. If you weren't with that person, there's a reason you weren't with that person. You see what I'm saying? Because if it was going to work out, it would have worked out the first go round. If it didn't, you don't need 10 and 15 times to keep telling you, well, this ain't your person. You know what I'm saying? It's like people will do insanity. They will continue to do the same thing and hit their head against that same rock, expecting a different outcome each time. Oh, it's going to be different this time. And then when it's not, they're very upset, and it's like, oh, it's warfare. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. That's why we got to be careful, because a lot of things is not warfare. They can have a mixture of warfare, or it can be something going on, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be. And this is what I myself, because I didn't know about a lot of warfare before, but I do know it can be a tool that is used against you. But a lot of times, sometimes it is. It could be a mixture of the warfare and just of what people generally wanted. And God didn't tell them they can have it or be with it. And then you went along and you got it because that's what you wanted. And then you found out later on that that wasn't what you should have had. So, and then when you see people get married over and over again, talking about God sent this person, God sent that person, be careful, because if that's the case, God sent every one of them people and not one of them lasted, then that wasn't God. That was you. That was what you wanted. And once again, you didn't learn, and you continued on with your same old thoughts, habits, patterns that become cycles. And that's what that was. And you stayed stuck in that cycle. And so you just kept marrying the same old person. They talk about meeting the same man and meeting the same woman, finding them in different bodies. And that's just the demonic, what your stench is, your attachment, whatever is attached to you, whatever is on you, keep finding you. And until you go do the work, because a lot of people jump from relationship to relationship. When you're dating, listen, don't do that. Okay? Even myself. Because you will see, you need that time to go do other things. That's all I'm going to say to that. I do want to go further into the codependency thing, because I myself, between these demonic forces, the witchcraft, sorcery, and that, and the healing from soul wounds and demons, different things, we are seeing a lot of these things that are going on, and we're not really understanding, our part that we play in it. And we need to understand that, because, like I said before, when you see sometimes, because sometimes it'll be a lot of warfare. We'll think it's warfare, things going bad. And we'll say, oh, well, because, a lot of times they say people are chosen, people are this, they go through a lot of things in life. And it is, and sometimes that can be the case. But then sometimes that can be on the other side. That can be a disobedience thing. That can be a curse thing. That can be a other different thing, a witchcraft, sorcery. It could be other things. So the perspective and the manner of what we look at it and what it really is can be two different things. We got to ask God, pray fast, ask Him for about these things. But when you see that sometimes you're fighting for things and it's hard and it's like it's never working, that could be a good tell sign that may not be the people, place, or thing that you need to be dealing with. Because, and sometimes people say the opposite. Oh, well, it wouldn't be fighting me so hard if it was, and then sometimes it's fighting you so hard because God really doesn't want you with that person. So it's like we have to look at it from all angles. And we have to ask God about these things because we have to really be sure. And I hate this that's going on with is it Henry and Monica? But the sad part about this, and when we get a certain age and we've been a person for a certain amount of time and we see a lot of things going on, even in the natural, we know spiritual things go on all the time. But we have to pay attention because there could have been signs and we just not seen them. And other people could have been telling us certain things and we were just not paying any attention to it at all. And so that becomes the heartbreak behind the situation, and divorce or separation in any shape or form is not a good thing. I went through it myself. People were happy about it. They enjoy it because they don't want you to be happy. A lot of times, if you're the one that's married and the rest are not, it becomes an issue. It becomes a problem. And you will see these things. I tell people all of the time, when people die and when people get married, that's how you will really, truly, or they're sick, you will see who's really who and what's what. On the marriage end is because you'll see how people treat you, how they act, if they support you, if they want to love you, be there or not, for different reasons. And sometimes them not, sometimes certain things is for your good and sometimes it's not. And then also when it comes, because sometimes people see things when you're trying to get married that you don't see. And then they will try to tell you, but then you're so, you don't want to hear it. So, and then we have this a lot, with us, and it could be in any area of our lives, and then sometimes it's not that people are always hating or don't want to see you do well. Sometimes they care about you. They're looking out for you and they want to give you some advice. But a lot of times when love is blind and, when emotions run high and things like that, we don't see, and a lot of times we can see everybody else's stuff and not our own. And this is where that comes in. So then two, like I was saying before, when it comes to the age brackets, the racial, the cultural, these you got to pay attention to. And then on the other end, when people are dying and they're getting ready to leave, some stuff, and you see how people, come out and want to be bothered and, and then when they're sick and when, no one wants to come help and take care of them, then you'll see that then as well. So it's like you're going to see people, and I remember they were saying at different stages and phases in your life, and you have to see them in all. Because until you do, like they say, you don't know a person until you live with them. And that's why I used to tell people, if I want to remain friends with them, I couldn't live with them. And they're like, oh, why would you say? Because I know me, and I know there's certain things, although we are friends, although we are, certain things, relatives, it's certain things you do in your house, so I wouldn't do in mine. And that's fine when you do it over there, but when we do it over here, it's going to be a problem. So then this is where that line gets drawn. You love them, you respect them, and whatever they do in their homes and how they, relate to their children and their husband or their whatever. But if we can't do that over here. Because, see, I accept it because that's who you are and that's what you do over there. But not over here. I'm not doing that over here. And when you respect people and you respect them enough to be honest with them, to tell them these type of things, and they will argue down, oh, you're not a friend, no, you're not a... No, it's not that I'm not a friend. I love you to pieces, but it's just certain stuff certain people do that, it's just certain no-nos. Like they said, the boundaries, certain no-nos. And the more that I'm evolving now, and the more that I'm starting to see, a lot of things that I went through very unnecessarily, but it is necessary because then I wouldn't be here being able to talk about it and tell you about it. It could help somebody else. Like I said, the divorce, people like to see, you divorced or sad or, they were never happy for you in the first place. They didn't want you to get married. They didn't want you to have nothing. They didn't want you to be or do nothing better than them or on a level of them. Because they always see you in this light and people will see you. Rejection is another thing. A lot of people rejected from beginning, from birth, whether it's from their family, from God, from whatever. And when they were born, this was a life that they've had where it has been so hard, the blessings or the curses. And you can see it in the bloodline, how the families are. If things are just so traumatic, if they're so hard, if there's so much devastation all of the time, you could have families where there's ACS cases, where they're not married, where there's alcoholism, molestation, all these things. When you see all of these things going on, you gotta know that something's going on. There's just so much going on, going in and out of jail, all of these, there's so much going on. And that's in the spiritual and in the natural realm. And it's just sad that all of these things are happening, and they're just getting passed down. But a lot of it is not sticking together, not having support, not having relationship with God, or just, certain things that are there that have happened that nobody talked about, that were in the bloodline, that were just there. And so it just continued on. And I'm looking into that as well, the bloodlines, because some of the bloodlines were blessed, some of them were cursed. Now, when we talk about Joseph, we talk about Joseph going through all of these things, and in the end, God elevated him and he was blessed, right? So we could talk about the chosen from that angle. But then there's some of them who went through a lot and they were not. They were actually cursed. So it's just, we got to figure this out. We got to ask God and really find out what's going on here. It could be one, it could be the other, it could be a mixture. But we have to be paying attention. And for her and her husband, I would hate this for them. But, and it would be a devastating thing. My thing to her and to all women: make sure you have your own finances. Make sure you have your own stuff put away. It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, you do not want to be in these type of situations. I always tell women this, because although, men want to be the head and all of that, that is wonderful. And I would never say not to do that. But at the same token, this is where women end up being when things like this happen, if you never did anything but be a stay-at-home mom. And it's not to say that being a stay-at-home mom is not more than enough. But it's just that when it's time now, because this can go either way. God can, reconcile them. We're not going to sit here and say that he can't. That would be a beautiful, wonderful thing. God can reconcile them. He can fix it. They can come back together. He can make it work for them. And that would be a beautiful thing. Or, depending on them and depending on what is going on, because God can't force them. Remember, it's still their will. And if he, doesn't want to reconcile, if he doesn't want to be with her, then no one can force him. No one can make him. So at, this age, we're older. She didn't had a couple kids. She's older. And if that was to happen, then now she would be trying to figure out life at this age. She finding another man and all these other things. And, even the divorce and all of that will be horrific. The children, her, it just, so we have to, you look at these things, because it is the reality of what can happen. We sit here and we say, oh, these things cannot happen, but they can. We sit here, we know that we have prayed and asked God, to heal people, to whatever it was. And a lot of times it wasn't, God's will, it wasn't the way, or whatever it was. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. But we have to be prepared either way, because I went through that and I never thought, but I had other things in place to where if something was, I already had money set aside. I already had certain things, not necessarily, but I knew what steps I would take and make. I always worked during my marriage anyway. So regardless, I would have finances, I would have, access to them, and know how to do, certain things. And I feel like when these men want to have control over everything and not want you to know anything, that's a signal and a sign too. Because you can be married and be the head of the household, and you can still have access to the pages, to the monies, to the finances. If he got sick and something happened, you would still need to know where is what to do, how to do it, whatever. And see, this be the thing that be red flags when people want to keep you in the dark, keep you codependent upon them, keep you, this like the government, whoever else, relying on them so that you can't move and prosper unless they say so or do move forward in your life. And that is a problem, because that is playing God in a person's life. That is manipulation, that's control, that's sorcery, whatever you want to call it. Why? Because you cannot make and or force people to love you, to stay with you, to be with you, to do this. No, you cannot. And you cannot stop the process and the progress in their life just because you're not with them or you don't want to be with them. No. A lot of people collect people where they want to collect you. And when you see that, it's demonic. It's just a ego, a pride thing where they want to collect you. They don't want to be with you. They don't want to love you. They don't want to have you. They just want to tie your life up to where no one else can be with you. No one else can have you, and you cannot be happy with anyone else. And that is a problem. Because if you can have another woman, if you can go on and do what you want to do, then I should be able to move on with my life as well. I shouldn't have to stay stuck here. I shouldn't have to be, stuck in this. No, because God does not want that for us either. And we must understand that these things are evil. They're demonic. This is people manipulating and controlling situations, putting things in place, using the Bible, the word, whatever, to get over, to, use it as a Fruit Loop box to get over and tell you whatever it is they want to tell you so they can have that control and mastership over you. So they can use it to do what they want to be done. And this is where the transactional relationships are, where they're all about transactions. And this is a lot of times where we are with each other, with the jobs, with everything. With God, transactional. Where is the real true love in any of it? That if we didn't have anything, we would still love each other. We still be, if you didn't look the best, if you didn't have the this, if you didn't have the that, where is the, I will still love you. I'll still be there. I'll still, because this is us against the world, because that's what real love is all about, and when you look at all of these situations, because I look at people and they're married and they're still talking about child support. They're still talking about this and that with the ex and the next. And it's like, have you even moved on? Have you ever even decided to move on with who you're with and be happy with what you have going on? And then the ex will say, oh, he's giving child support and the new guy should do this. Well, you don't know what the new guy is doing or not, but you still have children over there. You should still pay. And if you married a whole nother woman and she got kids or whatever, and you're willing to take care of them, what is the problem? You see what I'm saying? But see, people like to control. They like to manipulate. And this is what this is about. They want to keep you stuck. They don't want you to move on. They don't want you to have nothing. They don't want you to do better. They don't want you to know. Without them, they was the end all be all. And if you weren't with them, then guess what? Your life is going to just go down and you can't have nothing. And this is what really people thinks. And it's crazy. And this is why you have to get away from them. Because it's like, you thought just because you came into my life, it was a time I never even knew you. I was living before I met you. I was living during you. I'm going to keep living after you. And life does go and move on. People think because they throw you to the side or push you to the side, you're supposed to be sitting there waiting for them. That they really think that this is how highly they think of themselves and how less and low that they think of you. That if they was to leave you today or tomorrow, your life would you would just go jump off a cliff and that would be the end all be all. Like they just had that much effect on your life. And it's like when you sit back and you look at it and you're like, whew, that was when they leave or when you break up and you get a sigh of relief, that lets you know that was a draining situation. When your skin starts changing, your body and your hair starts growing back and all these things, if you're looking better after the relationship than you were before, that lets you know they were draining you. I remember Erica Mena in Safari, and I remember how she looked when she met him, and he chased her down, and he did all the wonderful things, and then by the time they broke up, how she looked like an anorexic, I don't know what she was, and I was like, dag, he really just sucked the life right out of her. And you will see it with men and with women, because women do it just like men do, and will come in and tear your whole life up, and from the time that they met you and got with you, they just came and just they drained you. They needed you for everything and they got what they wanted and they took it and they left. I have a son that went through some stuff. With his, and has been the same. It's like, and when we see it, it is so sad and you want so bad for them to change, for things to be different. And it's like, it's not. And then the narrative will be spun, because anybody can spin a narrative and they will make people look so terrible. Now I'm going to tell both ends. I'm going to tell my part and I'm going to tell the other person's part. And it wasn't all great. It wasn't all terrible on either end. But when it got to the last ending, because the beginning is wonderful, the middle is, so, and the end be that big hoorah, the wake up call. And then you see what was really going on because you just weren't paying any attention. I can tell you what went on in my relationship after the fact more than I could while it was going on. Because when I look at it and I'm like, okay, so he got with me, okay. It was X, Y, and Z, okay, And then afterwards things changed. Oh, once he got himself together, then I was everything with the child of God. I was so terrible. I was so this and I was so that. Everybody else, but wasn't I the same person when you met me? You didn't upgrade me any. I upgraded you. But then you look at this situation and you start to think like, wow, so this is what this was about. And it was a rush. It was, oh, I want to be with you. But there was always something behind it. It wasn't just the, oh, I love, no. I had 4 kids. There was so many red flags. And I didn't see them because I wanted love. I wanted to be with someone. I wanted to, eventually get married. But, and I'm like, well, but see, this is what happens. We don't question it enough. And I think I did, but I kind of let stuff go, try to give people the benefit of the doubt type situation. And just kind of see, because only time will tell. But it's a lesson, and you learn it. And once you learn it, you'll never forget it. So then you know what to look for the next go round. Usually when men get with women or women get with, if you're going to be together, if you're going to use each other, if you're going to this, you're going to that. You kind of can feel it on either end. Although we may, like I said, toss it to the side just to see, because we want to believe what people say instead of their actions more than anything. And if their actions and words are not lining up, that is a clear sign that something's not right. That is a red flag among red flags. But these are spiritual things as well as natural things, and they can be sent to derail you, derail your life, to stop you, to, if you're trying to get somewhere and do some things, and if you're called to be and do, but if we're not paying attention, it will have your life stagnated for 5 and 10 years. You see what I'm saying? And that is the big ultimate thing. To have you stuck and stagnated, to not get to where you need to be, where God wants you to be in life, okay, at certain points and times where these open heavens, open doors will be open for you. And that is what it is, to wear you out, to tire you out, to confuse you, to do all these things. And I'm learning these things myself, and I'm learning them as I'm seeing the patterns, and sometimes you have to go through them more than once, and until you get it, until you see it, and it happens. And I hate it for them. I hate this, the children, the family, and all of this. And I hope that this can be reconciled. But even so, it will never be the same. Can you be with a person after all of this has happened? Because going back to what y'all were, it obviously wasn't working that way. So now you have to reinvent and do something different. And throughout marriages and lives, you will change. Can you handle the people changing? What they liked before, they may not like now. What they did before, they may not do now. And this is a lot too, on both ends. A lot of times men want to, they get bored, they get tired. For whatever reason, they got married, they want to be younger, do younger things, have what the women do. They get bored, and then this is the time when they want to decide, well, they want to go do something different. And you can't change people, and you can't stop them from being and doing what they want to do. So, even in marriages, although they are made in heaven, it's supposed to be, we have to work them out right here on earth. We have to work them out and live them out here. So we have to understand that. And because of that reason, it just takes a lot. And, if you're going to be married, if you want to stay married, because being married is not the goal, staying married is the goal. Like I said, getting a house, getting cars, getting things is not the goal. Staying there is the thing, and building on it. So, it just is what it is. But this video is kind of a little bit longer than I wanted it to be. We started out, and like I said, we're going to get into these things. We're going to talk about them a little bit later on. I'm still doing some research and some stuff on these things, even for my own self and my own life, because I have so many questions that I need answered as well. And this is where the grief and the loss, that she's going to have to go through a lot of these things, grieving of whatever was lost in the marriage and herself, and it's going to take time. This healing, deliverance, and restoration, can they make it? Can they? Yes, they can. It's going to be a lot of work, though. And it will never be the same, and you don't want it to be, because obviously something was broken even in that. Because a lot of times we want things to go back to being the way they used to be. They will never go back to being the way they used to be, nor do they need to go back to being the way that they used to be. After certain things happen, it is an eye-opener. And some people want it and can deal with it, and some people cannot. And you have to know which one you are. Because, like I said, we all have a choice. Love is a choice. And just like everything else we have in life, it is a choice. And we could choose to be with someone or we could choose not to. And no one can make us and force us. Like, so, but to my ladies, be more careful when you are vetting these men, when you're dating these men, especially in the dating phase. And right now, you know, personally, it's too much with the dating. Because men, I don't know if they're men, women, they want men and women. There's too much going on. I would say, you know, get with the Lord. Get yourself healed. Have him, you know, deliver you, restore you. And, you know, figure out what it is, your purpose is here. And then if God is going to bring someone, he'll bring someone. But to be banking, harping, creating a whole life based around it, you know, is just crazy. I'm just saying that. But anyway, bruised and not broken. Be blessed. You guys, I hope this video was a blessing to you. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you like, you can donate to the channel. If not, I'm fine. Like I said, God is my provider. He always has been. And to all the birthdays, because I normally don't do the birthdays. There's a lot of birthdays that's been out there. Happy birthday to all the birthdays. And be blessed. In Jesus' name, amen.